Alright, welcome to our video. Today I am going to be talking about full range squatting versus half range squatting. Which is better for rugby? Which one's going to bring you the most results on and off the field? So is it going to get your legs stronger? Is it going to get your legs bigger if you squat deeper? Or is it going to be better if you squat half? And then at the end of the video, I'm going to be going through how you can actually squat deep and how I've got most of my clients that I've ever trained to be able to squat deep. Before we get started, please like and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us out, that helps us grow, and then share it to someone. Share it to someone you know that can't squat very well, or they want to improve their performance. So let's get into it. Let's have a look at some of my clients that I've actually helped squat deep and squat well. So we've helped over 2,000 rugby athletes worldwide. And this ranged from professional athletes down to your amateur guys that just want to feel better out in the field, all the way down to your kids. We got 13, 14-year-old kids starting in the gym. Now, what better way to start learning, what better way to start the gym than actually learning how to squat properly and move properly? You might hear that not everyone should squat deep, and I'm here to bust that, because in my experience, most people I have been able to train, because in my experience, I've actually helped so many people actually be able to squat deep that couldn't before, and mostly it's a technical issue. Okay, it's not really it's not usually a structural issue. One person I really struggled with actually had an ankle plate, had a full ankle surgery, ankle plate, and that was really limiting a lot of movement in the ankle. And not all the movement actually comes from the ankle. A lot of it will come from your hips and actually being able to coordinate your hips. Okay, so look at all these clients. I can do that for you, and I'm going to show you how. So full range squat versus a half squat, a box squat, or even a quarter squat from the pins. Now, all these movements are just movements, right? And they're being loaded. Okay, so there's nothing actually wrong with the movements. It's just what's going to get us the most for the amount of time and effort we're going to put in. Okay, and so a full range squat has actually been shown to develop the glutes more and adductors, some parts of the quadriceps. Okay, so if we know that, then we know that, okay, straight up, full range squat, we can get a bit more out of it. Okay, but what about the quarter squat or a half squat? What does that mean? Well, it usually means you can do more weight because you're not getting as low. It's not quite as hard on the body. The angles help. So you can do more weight. So that is actually one benefit of a quarter squat or a half squat versus a full range squat. Okay, so you might be thinking, okay, well, if you can do more weight with a half squat or a quarter squat, isn't that going to be better because you can load up, you can get more intensity, so more weight on the bar, which means that your muscle is going to work harder because there's more weight, which is very true as well. Okay, so that is true. You can get more weight and we can get strong, and that's why I actually use quarter squats and I use half squats sometimes in my programs. But majority of the time, we will squat low. Okay, and here is my main reason for it. Okay, because it actually prepares you for other movements that we're going to do. So I like to be able to use Olympic lifting, and I'll show it in here. I like to use Olympic lifting like power snatches, power cleans, even normal cleans and normal snatches. Okay, where you actually have to drop under the bar. Okay, so you can see here below where you actually got to get under the bar. I'll do a demonstration here. Now, if you only practice, if I don't hit that. So if you only practice power snatches, or if you only practice half squats, okay, that is not going to help you get down to here. Okay, so it's limiting us straight there. Okay, so your strength when you get here, you'll lose that. You'll only be able to get to here and get back up because you haven't practiced those end ranges. You haven't practiced where you need to be strong.
How do you expect to be able to do a full power clean or full snatch even if you can't do a full squat like this? You can't because you won't be strong. So what, you're going to rely on doing trap bar jumps for the whole rest of your career? Gee, that sounds fun for training.
Now, some people and some strength coaches will be like, oh, you don't need to do power cleans, power snatches. You can do other things instead. You don't need to do weightlifting things. That's fine. I work with more advanced athletes, or like when I work with professional guys who are just in with maybe for 6 months, for a 6-week block. If they don't have the mobility already, you can't give them those sorts of things. Okay, which is a bit sad because like if you think you're a professional athlete, you should be mobile. It's your job to be as athletic as possible. You should be able to do all these different movements because being a good athlete is all about being very coordinated and being able to move your body in space and time with great coordination. Power obviously comes with that. So if you haven't learned how to squat deep, then you're going to struggle to do like all these other more advanced movements that are fun too. And yeah, sure, you can do your trap bar jumps and stuff, and they work. But like, one, we're taking away a lot of posterior chain. So when you're doing any sort of clean or a snatch or anything like that, because the bar's in front of us, where the weight's situated, you're going to use a lot of lower back, a lot of hamstrings. And these are things that are actually good for rugby players or sports people in general to actually build up as that posterior chain. You always hear people talking about posterior chain. You need strong posterior chain to help you run faster, to be able to absorb force, all these things. So that's one reason I really like weightlifting. Straight away, you're starting to limit yourself by just doing your quarter squats or just doing your half squats and not being able to do like a high, but a proper get right down, or a proper front squat where you get right down. You also don't want to be that player. So you also don't want to be that all the time. And you see it all the time with rugby players. Like, they go out in the field and when they're warming up, they take forever to warm up because their hips are tight and they're like, oh, my back's sore. I mean, so much of the time that your lower back is sore, your hips are really tight, so you don't get as much. That's not every case, but a lot of cases you'll find your hips are tight. Their ankles can't move, and then they expect to go and perform at the best. Sure, they might be strong still. Okay, you can be strong and still, by doing your quarter squats or half squats, whatever you're doing. But does that mean that, like, you're going to be fully mobile on the field? Now, I know what I'd rather be, because I know back when I first started training, I was doing leg press and I was leg pressing 200 kilos on each leg. And I was like, oh, this is really good. What I found was it didn't really help me. And I was squatting 150 kilos for half reps as well. I was probably getting down to 90 degrees. It didn't really help me that much. And I remember I got back to the field and I felt stiff and I felt slow and I felt sluggish. Like, I couldn't move everything quite as well. So I do have quite a bias, because a lot of the people I've trained are actually quite young. So a lot of the people I've trained are between 20 and 16. How I think about things is, I'm thinking about the long-term gains. I'm thinking about, not how good are they going to be in 8 weeks' time. Okay, how good are they going to be in 2 years if I get them mobile and they can do full range of movement, if they can do power cleans, if they can do full cleans, if they can do power snatches and full snatches, because they've developed the mobility, the technique. And then so when these players get to the next level, they can go in there and the S&C is like, oh my God, these guys are strong, they're mobile, we can just throw anything at them, so they are ready. So they are most ready for the field. If you're a young rugby player, athlete, any sort, if you can open your mind to that, okay, how good can I be in 5 years' time? If I get more mobile, if I stick to things like so how good can you be in 5 years' time? If you start to move well, if you start to train better. A lot of it's like, if you look at someone who squats, if someone squats how I teach a squat, the full range squat, which we're going to get there at the end of the video, I'm going to show you how, compared to someone who squats and they're really struggling, and what you'll see is they'll go down and they'll get stuck around about here and then they'll come back up. And it looks really ugly. And there's something about that, like, there's something to do with the coordination there, which I'll talk about later on. They just haven't developed that coordination of how to move the weight very efficiently through their hips, through their glutes, through all their muscles. Like, if it doesn't look right, and they haven't really learned how to move well with that weight, and that's what you see a lot. That's why people quarter squat and half squat, because they haven't actually really learned how to do it properly, and their body hasn't made the pathways that they need. That to me is like, it doesn't look right. It's probably not going to look right on the field. They're not going to move quite right in the field. And I'm not saying that's going to cause more injuries, but like, in my mind, the way I see it is like, it probably will cause more injuries at some stage, because they haven't got the coordination there of how to move their body properly. And like, you'll know people who they seem to move their body in a way that's just like, it just looks right, and they just know how to roll and not get, so much of that's just coordination. And like, I think you can train that. I definitely think you can train that. Okay, so besides the fact that, full range squats, they're going to develop more muscle faster, okay, because more range, more glutes, more adductors, okay, and that's a big one. Adductors, I don't really talk about the adductors, but the adductors are a big one for rugby players. Like, you want that thickness in your legs, okay, yeah, it might squish your balls, boys, a little bit, but I'm really bow-legged, so it doesn't affect me whatsoever. Yeah, these adductors are really good for that lateral movement, is having really strong adductors. So overall, like, yeah, more muscle, you can build more muscle with it, and it sets you up better for, like, long-term processes of being able to do more movements. And then thirdly, you're just going to be more mobile on the field. Okay, you'll have more coordination, more mobility through the hips, through your ankles. By no means am I saying don't do quarter squats, don't do half squats, don't do box squats. You can use them, okay? But use them to help you peak, okay? Use them to help you get used to higher loads because they're reduced range. And then go back to your full range squat. That's how I use them. That's how I use them on all my programs. So I think about peaking my athletes, one, near the start of the season, so they go out with a bang, and then I sort of reduce their volume a lot going into the middle of the season, and then I start to pick up just a little bit more, so then we're firing right at the end of the season, right for finals, and that's why my in-season programs are so important. All right, let's get into it. I want to show you now how you can squat deep as well. Okay, I shouldn't have to teach you how to do quarter squats and your half squats. They should be pretty self-explanatory, but I'm going to show you some of the reasons why people get stuck and why they aren't able to get low. Okay, maybe it's just an ego thing. So a lot of it might be an ego because they can't lift quite as heavy. You know, they want to put a belt on, they want to put the knee sleeves on, everything just to make to go heavier, right? Now, I'm wearing weightlifting shoes, okay, so they do have a wedge, all right? They have a wedge. I don't think a wedge is cheating or anything. All it's doing is elevating my ankle a little bit, okay, which allows me to move the weight better, okay? It does take a little bit of ankle range away, so I need a little bit less ankle range. That's fine, okay? If you don't have that, all you need is either one plate or two little plates under your feet, and that can act like a heel wedge. Do that, and then you could step on it from there. Now, here's the other excuse that I hear a lot of people say. A lot of people will be like, I've heard, oh, my legs are too long. So I can't squat deep. Now, I'm going to show you guys that are 6'8" doing this. I'm going to show you guys that are 6'5" doing this. Squatting over 160 kilos at 6'5", getting all the way down. Guys, 6'2", 6'3". I'm 5'10", maybe just. So it's not that. And you might hear people be like, I've seen this test before too, where they'll do it lying down, but they'll lift up their leg and be like, oh, because your leg can only get to here, that's how deep you can squat. Okay, if you look at my leg there, that's how deep I can squat, just to there. So that would be, it's actually got nothing to do with it. It's actually how you set up. Okay, so for most people, what I find is when they go to rack the bar, I'm going to go this way so I can look at you guys. I'm going to rack the bar. Okay, and this is mistake number one you'll see. People doing a high bar. Or they'll go knees forward because they'll try and get the depth this way. And their knees will go forward and they're just trying to go straight down to balance themselves out. So I can actually feel my knees doing it like that. It feels awful, but most people don't have my mobility either because I've been practicing for so long. Now, if I just go knees forward, and my hips are straight down, most people get stuck around about here, and it's really hard. I can actually feel this right here in my quads. Okay, then they'll come back up. That's most people's high bar that you see that don't do my technique. It's not my technique, I shouldn't say that. That don't do this technique in general. So forward, they'll go, and they get stuck, and then they come back up. That's mostly what you see. And like that's mostly what you see. And like they'll say, okay, yeah, that's their test. They can't go any lower than that. But the thing is, all you have to do is get your width of your feet. I like around my shoulder width. Some people need a bit wider. It depends how wide their hips are. Okay, and most people also get stuck in this old theory of pushing their knees out. Now watch me push my knees out. This is me pushing my knees out. I'm going to face this way a bit more so you can see. My knees pushing out. I'm actually going to get stuck about there. That's actually really hard on my glutes to do that way. Okay, I don't feel anywhere near as strong. I get stuck there, I have to come back up. I can't get that depth out of that. It feels quite awful on my hips. What I like to do is go hips back, knees forward, okay? So hips back first, that's the main thing. And some people actually need to sit back more. And as you sit back into it, you should be able to get right down. So make sure you sit back. Okay, sit back. Knees go forward. They're not facing out, so you'll see my knees aren't facing out anymore. They're facing pretty much directly which way my toes go. And that really helps me get that full depth. Now, if you just think about your setup like that, you're actually going to find that your glutes are going to fire more. You're going to get that depth. You're actually going to be stronger there rather than trying to push your knees out or have your knees go forward. So they're the two big mistakes that I see is the knees out too much. And I'm going to say it right now. I used to be the coach that would cue the knees out. Twist your feet into the floor, all these things, they don't work as well. And like what I found was people's knees would come in, and I'll show you quite quickly, and if you watch Olympic weightlifters, their knees actually come in as they come up, so they'll go down, and they'll go like that. And most people will. Okay, they'll create that internal rotation, which creates a torque to be able to get back up to fire that muscle. Okay, so there's actually nothing wrong with that. And if you actually watch people, rugby players, sprinting, changing direction, you will see that quite often, is that hip will go in, all right? As they're sprinting, our hip will go in, okay? The knee will come up and it'll actually go in. And that's how we create a lot of torque like that. You'll see Olympic weightlifters, same thing, when they do their squats, their knees will come in. So don't be afraid of that. So I used to coach that, I know. I changed my theory probably when was it? About 2018, right before I left the gym. I was like, this is not working, didn't feel as good. And when I had my knees going forward, so much better, hips going back. And I found I got a lot of people squatting really well by doing that. So here's your 2 tips. So hips back, knees forward, okay? And if you need to, start with your heels elevated more, okay? And as you go, what you'll find is you'll get better at it. Your hips up here will start to free up, okay? And your ankles will free up. But the main thing is actually your coordination. So this goes for anything you work out in the first 3 weeks of doing an exercise or a rep and set scheme, is your coordination. You actually create more neural pathways to an area to allow you to be able to do something. So coordination goes first, and then you also build some strength up with that. Okay, but coordination is a big thing. And so being able to put your feet up on something and do it with sitting back. I've also got slant boards, but not everyone has a slant board. Hips back and down. Now there's other ways as well. So like you could also do a front squat. Now, so much of actually squatting deep too is actually being able to coordinate the weight of the bar on your back, or your center of, so being able to coordinate your center of mass. When the bar's in front of you, or the weight's in front of you, hit the microphone. Hopefully you can still hear me. When the bar's in front of you, then the weight's actually pulling you forward. So the center of mass changes, okay? And when the further that weight is in front, you'll find the easier it is to get your hips back. So back here, hips back. There's no point in doing your front squats or anything like that if you're not going to get the full range, because the whole reason you want to do your front squats and get a really good strong, not all the reason, but a good reason why you want to do your front squats is so you can then go to your clean, your power clean. You can then go to your power snatch, okay, with a weight in front of you. All right, so I hope you've got a lot out of this video. Full range versus quarter squats or half squats, they all work, right? They're all going to get you a bit stronger. Okay, I prefer doing full range, but I also use half range squats. I also use quarter squats. Okay, you got to be able to know when to use them all, because they all have their day. In general, if I can teach people to squat better, in my opinion, I can go long term and I can actually help them better long term. And I've shown that with some of the kids I've trained that have gone through the ranks and now are killing it. I've shown that with some of the professional guys I've trained that are so far ahead athletically than all their counterparts. It's ridiculous. I've shown that because then they can go and they can do power cleans, they can do snatches, and they can learn all these things. And then they've just got this arsenal of things that they're able to do. So they're actual athletes. They're not just restricted in these boxes of things. Okay, you can only do your trap bar deadlifts, or you can only do your trap bar jumps. Like, be my guest. If you want to be that tight rugby player, if you want to be that guy that doesn't move very well, doesn't look very good out in the field, but like, you've got a 200 kilo quarter squat or 200 kilo half squat that you did with a belt on, be my guest, right? It probably not going to increase your performance that much compared to if you did the long work, you did the hard work of getting yourself more mobile, being able to squat deep, and doing the long-term game. That's all I think it is. Like, I really do think it's just people thinking short-term. And I don't blame some strength coaches that have to go with teams and they've only got 8 weeks with an athlete. I don't have that problem. It's like, I work with people for a long time. Like, I have my 3-month programs, but most people will do that for at least 2 years. And over those 2 years, I really get to build them up. You know, some people are there for shorter, and that's fine. I'm going to do as much as I can to get them more mobile, moving better, so they're faster, they've got more arsenal of tricks they can do. That's why I continuously churn out the result. And that's why you see so many of my guys that do my programs, they get stronger, they get faster, because they get stronger, they get faster, they put on more muscle. It's because I know what's going to work. I know what's going to work long term. For each individual, I'm actually thinking long term, and I want you to start thinking long term about your results. Stop thinking short term, think in the long term. You may think you only have a couple of years before you go pro. Like, I've talked to so many 16-year-olds that are like, I've got to be squatting 200 by X amount of time. But like, realistically, your weights do not matter. I say this often, your weights do not matter. It's more about how you play. Which means that your weights are all individual to you, what you can currently do. So you might have really long legs, so you might be able to squat less. Does that mean you're any less of a rugby player? Does that mean you're any less of being able to build up those legs by by going a bit lighter, but keeping the quality really high? No. It all comes back to you at the end of the day and like what your body type is. It all depends on how you play. At the end of the day, it will always come back to how you're playing. And our job in the gym is to increase your potential for how you can play. That's what I do, is like I'm increasing your potential. And how I think about it is, okay, well, if I get you squatting, moving properly, and that goes for upper body too. I haven't touched on upper body. It's all been about lower body, because lower body is all about how well, how much power you can put into the ground, so you can run fast, you can bump people, all these things. So yeah. But yeah, if you've enjoyed this, if you've got some enlightenment out of this, which I think you should have, because I've just dropped a whole bunch of knowledge bombs on you, please send it to a mate, please send it to a teammate, send it to anyone. Okay, like and share it. If you want my program, if you want my help, I've got the programs that have proven time and time again to get people stronger, fitter, and faster, and actually get them playing better out in the field. Because that's what we want, right? We want you playing better out in the field. We'll be